look at how to take your pinch pot mug and we smoothed it with the flat side of our serrated kidney like this. Previously you had scored all of those coils together to join them. Then you use this side to smooth that out. So say I've already finished this, and then I had taken my wooden potter's rib, which I don't have here, and I smooth out the inside to stretch and expand it. Then I'm going to use my paddle if I want to condense the clay, to kind of shape it, flatten it out. So when you're experimenting with these shapes and the forms that you're creating, you can use the paddle to make it go in if you want, or to make it go out. I can also use some water and press out from the inside to stretch and kind of make it bubble out based on the shape that I want to create for my overall form. And before you do this, you want to make sure that those inner coils are really secured together. So you did that by using the wooden potter's rib to merge together those coils, and you also use the wooden modeling tool, and you use the wooden potter's rib to consolidate and condense those coils together as well. So if I wanted this to bubble out a little bit, I can make that clay a little bit more plastic by rubbing the inside, and if I want the top part to go in somewhat, I could spin it around. I could put it on my banding wheel to help do that too. To kind of paddle and shape it. This is totally optional. It's just something that you can do if that's the technique and the look that you're going for. So let's say that the top of mine is not even again. I can use my detail carving tool and I can slice off part of the top. You can also, if you're pretty skilled, use the metal the slicing tool, and you can cut it as it's spinning. But remember that we're trying to make the lip area smooth, so we can go back and revisit this. But let's talk about how to make a good foot. So first of all, you want to make sure that you have a good foundation on this, that it's sturdy, it's flat, it's not leaning whenever you look at your project. So then flipping it upside down, I can take this and I can paddle it, or I can just tap it on the bottom of the table or the wheel. So if I want to use the coils that I made the other day that had my stamps in it, this could be a decorative foot that I use. If I wanted to use this, I could see what size I want to use to make this, and if I make my coil face upright, vertical, I could just leave it like that. Or if I want it to angle out, when I connect the coil on, I will press the coils outward. So I want it to go out a little bit. I first need to score the bottom where I'm going to connect it, and you need to score whatever you're using to attach. Then your container slip, add that where you're going to connect it, and then that scored side connecting to the base of my project. And I want this to angle out a little bit, so I'm going to try to fan that. And then I'm going to use my wooden modeling tool to try to smash that clay together. If you just try to stick the clay on using scoring and slipping, most likely it's going to pop off of there when it dries. So you want to physically blend the clay together, but be mindful too of whatever stamp or design you have on there. You don't have to use the stamped coil to do this, but this is one way that you can incorporate that pattern, that design in there. Where my clay is coming apart, and make sure I try to blend that, and then even on the inside of this I could take some soft clay and I can patch that in there and then try to smooth that out using the wood modeling tool or your finger if you can. And then the inside, you want to make sure that you blend that clay together too. So it can start out kind of rough, and then you can use a sponge or some water to kind of smooth that out. Remember, if you add too much water, you're just going to encourage your clay to get sticky and messy. So the key to this, besides it just looking good, the aesthetic part, is that it's functional. So if you have a coil that's uneven, when you go to flip it upside down and set it on the table, if it's uneven, you're going to create a lean. So you do want to check and make sure that if you have to shave some of it or tap the base so that it's sitting upright, that you're checking that process. Then I got a metal ribbon tool, and I'm going to use this to shave off some of the top part of the lip of the clay because mine is still a little wide. And I want to narrow it down some so that it's more comfortable to drink out of. It's important that your lip of your mug is soft and not too thick because the water needs to pour off of that if you're using it to drink out of. Then I could take the little round sponge or your finger and wet it, run it over the lip of the mug so that you smooth that out, and kind of roll it so that it's not flat, that it has more of a curve to it. The sponge is pretty good for this as well. This is just a practice one, but just showing you kind of what that process looks like. Then let's talk about handles. So one way to make a handle is if you had a good coil that had a stamp design in it and you want to add that on, then we can look at how to attach it onto your mug, how much you want. Do you want it to go out straight and make a little loop? Do you want it to be curved, kind of like a question mark shape? Or is it more round like this? Or do you make it angular? But whatever size handle you want to make, you don't want it to be bigger than half the size of your project, or it's going to look like a massive ear coming off. So let's say I want to make a small handle for this one. I'm going to slice 2 areas and just kind of look to see if I like the look of that. If I want it to go down more like this, or if I want it to be curved out, if I want it to be smaller, I can cut it some more again. But wherever you want to connect it to your project, also consider the way that you position. If you have it off-centered, if that's intentional or you're just not paying attention. But wherever you're going to connect it, score both sides, score the clay, add the slit, and then connect that on. You can look to the side and see if that's too much or too little. I think it looks kind of weird on mine, so I'm going to make it actually even smaller than that. Keep in mind the clay does shrink, but it's not going to shrink a tremendous amount. If you make it too small from the beginning, then it's just not going to be functional whatsoever. Remember, you have to physically blend the clay together. If it's hard to do, if the clay is getting too hard, you can take some softer clay and you can try to patch that in on the inside and the outside. Use that wood modeling tool to really connect that clay together as best as possible. And then I would continue going around with that. Now if the clay is soft enough, I still need to go in and work the inside of this mug to make it smoother. But if the clay is soft enough, you can press into the clay body by holding onto the inside and pressing against the clay wall with your finger. So this would be your final step before you're totally done. You want to make sure you have everything else close to finish as possible, because otherwise you'll just ruin that design when you go through. Also, your clay wall needs to be strong enough that when you do that, that it can support you pressing into it. So here's a way to incorporate patterns, stamps, texture into a mug. We're focusing on creating a decorative foot and creating handles. We'll practice a variety of these, but this is the general process of how you do that. Then I go through and just make sure I really clean up any area. Anything that looks rough now is going to be intensified when it goes through the bisque firing, so you want to make that as smooth as possible. There you go, get to it.